I used to think that the hardest part of growing old was the quiet, but I was wrong. The hardest part is realizing that the people you would have taken a bullet for are the exact ones holding the gun. My name is Arthur Vance. At 70 years old, after decades of pulling double shifts at the printing press and raising a family on coffee and stubbornness, I found myself sitting at my own kitchen table while my daughter-in-law treated me like an unwelcome tenant. She folded her hands, looked me dead in the eye, and demanded my life savings or told me to hit the bricks. That single moment rewired everything I believed about blood and loyalty. Let me step back for a second so you can understand how a father gets to that point. When my wife Martha passed away 3 winters ago, my son, Raymond, stood by her casket, gripped my shoulder, and told me I would never be alone. He insisted I sell the house Martha and I had built our lives in and move into their spare bedroom. I trusted my boy, so I sold the place, packed a single trunk of memories, and brought along the $190,000 I had tucked away from 40 years of hard labor. For the first several months, the house was quiet, a distant, polite kind of quiet where everyone coexists but nobody really connects. That fragile piece shattered on a humid Thursday afternoon. I had just finished repairing their broken basement steps, saving them a hefty contractor fee, and was washing up at the kitchen sink. Raymond's wife, Chloe, walked into the room with a chilling presence, pulling out a chair across from me with the cold efficiency of an executioner. She did not call me dad or show a shred of warmth. She simply stated that we needed to restructure the living arrangements regarding the household finances. I dried my hands slowly, feeling a sudden chill in the room, and asked her what exactly needed restructuring since I paid for my own food and fixed everything that broke. Chloe did not even hesitate as she told me that I was living under their roof completely rent-free without contributing to the heavy mortgage. She casually threw out the exact figure of my savings, which meant my own son had handed her my financial secrets on a silver platter. I kept my composure, reminding her that the money was the only safety net Martha and I had left after a lifetime of sacrifice. Without a hint of shame, she looked around the kitchen and proposed that I sign over $95,000 as a permanent investment in the property, or she suggested I start looking for a new place to live. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush a man, but I did not scream, and I did not beg. I simply finished my water, wiped the counter, and walked straight to my bedroom, ignoring her voice calling after me to finish the discussion. That night, I held Martha's old silver locket and realized my time in that house was officially over. I am a veteran of tough times, and I did not survive decades of factory labor by panicking in the dark. I waited a few days, quietly contacted an old union buddy, and by the following Monday, I was looking at a modest, sturdy cottage on Oakridge Avenue. The little house needed work, the porch railings were loose, and the backyard gate was hanging by a thread. But the moment I stood on that property, I breathed in something I had forgotten existed: absolute freedom. I made a full cash offer that very afternoon, and within 24 hours, the keys belonged to me. When I told Raymond that evening that I was moving out by the weekend, he looked up from his phone, completely stunned. He stammered that Chloe was just throwing out ideas and did not mean it harshly. But I looked at my son, the boy I had raised and protected, and told him we both knew exactly what she meant. My moving day was a brisk Saturday, and while Chloe stayed hidden behind closed doors, Raymond stood in the driveway with his hands in his pockets, watching my buddy help me load the truck. Right before we pulled away, Raymond muttered that I did not have to leave like this, but I just looked out the window and told him that his wife did not have to make that demand either. My first night in my new cottage was spent on the front porch with a mug of black coffee, wrapped in a blanket of beautiful, uninterrupted silence. Suddenly, a dry, amused voice drifted over from the porch next door, asking if I was the stubborn man who bought the old Miller place. I turned to see an older woman sitting in a wicker chair, holding a steaming mug and observing me with a sharp, intelligent gaze. Her name was Clara Finch, a retired school superintendent who immediately warned me that she kept strange hours, hated unkept lawns, and made a legendary apple tart. For the first time in years, a genuine smile broke across my face, and as she raised her mug in a silent welcome, I felt the first real spark of a brand new chapter. Clara was a force of nature, a widow who spoke her mind with absolute honesty but never a drop of malice, and over the next few weeks, we formed a comfortable kinship. By the third week, our lives had fallen into a beautiful, unwritten routine of morning greetings and shared wisdom across the garden fence. Clara had a way of cutting through the nonsense, and I found myself naturally buying extra groceries, a fresh loaf of sourdough, or her favorite loose-leaf tea, just to pass over the hedge. But the peace was interrupted on a rainy Tuesday evening, while I was finally reinforcing the backyard gate. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and Raymond's name flashed across the screen for the first time since I had walked away from his house. When I answered, his voice sounded incredibly fragile, stripped of all the defensive pride he usually carried. He asked if I had a moment, and when I told him I was working on the house, he let out a long, ragged breath before confessing that things had gone completely off the rails. He revealed that his logistics company had downsized, a corporate storm he had been hiding from everyone for months, and he had been laid off the previous week. My heart ached for my boy, because despite the bitter betrayal, a father never truly stops loving his child, and his pain immediately became my own. Then, after a long silence, Raymond admitted that Chloe wanted to arrange a dinner with the three of us to talk things over. I told him I would have to think about it and hung up, standing in the fading light of my backyard, feeling the heavy complexity of family pulling at my sleeve again. Clara's voice drifted over the fence, gently asking if I was doing all right after that phone call, and I honestly told her I did not know yet. She offered to bring over some fresh tart, and despite the chaos spinning back into my life, I found myself laughing, agreeing that a sweet distraction was exactly what I needed. What I did not realize then was that Chloe's sudden desire for dinner had nothing to do with making amends, and everything to do with a hidden disaster. The very next morning, before any dinner could take place, a sudden knock sounded at my front door, and when I opened it, Chloe was standing on my porch entirely alone. The arrogant, corporate armor she had worn at the kitchen table was completely gone, replaced by an exhausted, terrified expression that made her look entirely different. She quietly asked if she could come inside, and as we sat on the porch, she gripped her coffee mug like a lifeline, confessing that she was not there to beg for my savings. She choked back tears and revealed a devastating secret. She had secretly taken out a massive second mortgage to fund a failed business venture, and they were now months away from foreclosure. Looking at this woman who had once tried to cast me out, I did not feel a single drop of malicious satisfaction, only a profound, heavy sadness for the mess they had created. I thought of Martha, and how human beings often turn their deepest terrors into an ugly desire for control when everything else is slipping away.